Valerie never had it easy. Her father, Captain Kevin Dawson, was killed in action in Afghanistan when she was just a little girl. He died a hero. That's what the letter from the Department of Defense said. But no letter, no folded flag, and no medal could replace a father. Her mother, Veronica, raised Valerie alone. She tried her best, she really did, but life had dealt her a cruel hand. Veronica was always sick. She'd spend weeks, sometimes months, on medical leave until her employer would start hinting that they didn't need someone who was constantly calling in sick. Time after time, Veronica would resign voluntarily, then lock herself in the bedroom and cry into her pillow from sheer helplessness. Money was always tight. Some nights, dinner was nothing more than a slice of bread smeared with margarine, or plain pasta with nothing on it. At school, Valerie was always the worst-dressed kid in class. Children can be cruel. They say exactly what they see. In her class, Valerie was the outcast. But other girls would huddle at the back of the classroom, whispering about how Valerie had shown up in the same patched-up sweater again. She got used to their snickering. She learned to keep her eyes on her desk and pretend she didn't hear. When Valerie turned 14, her mother passed away. Her Aunt Claudia, Veronica's sister, took her in. But life didn't get any better. In many ways, it got worse. Claudia called Valerie a freeloader, a lazy bum, a burden. But the irony was thick. Claudia herself had no interest in working or keeping house. She quickly figured out that Valerie was old enough to be put to use. She dumped every household chore on the girl's shoulders. She even sent Valerie to the corner liquor store to buy wine on credit from her best friend Evelyn, who worked there and was always willing to put another bottle on Claudia's tab. Claudia loved her evening glass of cheap red wine. When there was no money for wine, she'd send Valerie to the neighbor's house for moonshine. By the end of every month, they were back to bread and margarine. Money slipped through Claudia's fingers like water. She'd pay off her debts the moment her check came in, and they'd be broke again within days. When Claudia got tipsy, she'd start the same song every single time. When are you gonna get married and stop being such a burden on me? When are you finally gonna leave? She'd say it over and over until Valerie was in tears. Now Evelyn, Claudia's best friend from the liquor store, had a son. And Evelyn didn't just work at the store. She owned it. Claudia was bitterly jealous of their family's money, and a plan began forming in her wine-soaked mind. If Valerie married Evelyn's son, Claudia would become family. She could walk into that store without a dime and never be turned away. Her debts, and they were substantial, would simply be forgiven. Life would be sweet. So Claudia started pushing. Don't you think Evelyn's boy is handsome? He's got a good business. You'd never go hungry. Valerie said nothing. But when she turned 18, Claudia's hints turned into relentless pressure. Every single day, she'd paint pictures of a comfortable life with Evelyn's son, of never worrying about bills again. But it was never about Valerie. It was always about Claudia, about her debt, her wine, her comfort. The girl who had always been quiet, always obedient, always kept her head down. That girl finally snapped. "I am not going to solve your financial problems," Valerie shouted. "Find someone else to sell off." She slammed the door so hard the walls shook. When she came back, she didn't say a word. She packed her few belongings into a duffel bag. She grabbed the piggy bank that Claudia didn't know existed. Valerie had been secretly saving, dollar by dollar, from the day she moved into that house. And she took her father's medals. His Bronze Star, his Purple Heart, the citation for valor. These were the only things she had left of him. That Bronze Star had become her talisman. She'd hold it in her palm when life felt impossible. And somehow, she'd find the strength to keep going. The money from the piggy bank was enough to rent a small room from a kind elderly woman named Dorothy, with a little left over for groceries. Valerie was on her own. She sat on the narrow bed in her rented room and stared at the wall. College was out of the question. Who would pay tuition? Who would pay rent while she studied? She needed a job now. One day at the grocery store, she picked up a free community newspaper with job listings. There were plenty of openings, but they all required degrees, certifications, experience. Valerie had none of that. She'd barely finished high school. She ran her finger down the page and stopped at one listing. Janitorial staff needed. Where else would they take someone fresh out of high school? All she could do was push a mop across a floor. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and it would put food on the table. She called the number. They told her to come in immediately. It turned out there was a reason they were so eager. That office had a reputation for its toxic work environment. Janitors never lasted long. The place hadn't been properly cleaned in 3 days. The HR manager practically shoved the contract into her hands. Valerie signed without reading the fine print. She grabbed a mop and bucket and got to work right away. She pushed open the door to a large room filled with computer workstations and office workers. Keeping her head down, she began mopping the floor with quiet, steady strokes. "What is that smell?" Valerie flinched. The shriek came from right behind her, so close it nearly burst her eardrum. She turned around. The woman standing there was beautiful, but it was a dangerous kind of beautiful. The kind of beauty that belongs to villains in fairy tales. Dark eyebrows arched like drawn bows, almond-shaped eyes that glittered with malice, hair black as a raven's wing, pulled into a sleek, aggressive style with a sharp widow's peak at the center of her forehead, high cheekbones, a pointed chin. One look at her and you knew this woman was gorgeous, and she was absolutely ruthless. Her name was Mariana. "Are you deaf? Can't you smell that your mop reeks? Go rinse it with some actual cleaning solution, now." Mariana waved her hand dismissively, as if shooing away an insect. Valerie's cheeks burned. She gripped the mop handle and walked toward the door. As she passed two young men sitting near the exit, she heard them whispering. "Did you see her? The new cleaning girl? Yeah, she's actually really pretty." And she was. But Valerie's beauty was nothing like Mariana's. Where Mariana was sharp and predatory, Valerie was soft and warm. She had large grey eyes, a high forehead, full lips that still had a childlike softness to them, and thick blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail with a simple elastic band. Even her old, shapeless, thrift store clothes couldn't hide her slender waist and graceful figure. "She looks like Cinderella," one of the guys whispered, and Mariana just played her evil stepsister. They kept their voices low. Nobody wanted to be overheard by the Queen of Dorfus, but they didn't know that Mariana had the hearing of a predator. All cruel women do. It's how they gather ammunition. Before Valerie had even left the room, Mariana was already gleefully dissecting every item of her clothing. With the other women in the office, the faded sweater, the worn-out shoes, the drugstore hair tie. Valerie wanted to snap the mop handle over her knee and tell them all to go to hell. But then she thought about her empty wallet, about rent, about the jar of peanut butter that was the only thing in her kitchen cabinet. She rinsed the mop. She went back in. She mopped the floor. She said nothing. Every day was poison. Mariana didn't just bully Valerie herself, she orchestrated it. She turned the entire office against the new janitor. She whispered to the supervisors. She made snide comments loud enough for everyone to hear. She was an artist of humiliation, and Valerie was her canvas. Only one person showed any kindness. His name was Kyle, the same guy who had called her Cinderella on her first day. One evening, after everyone else had left, janitors always finished last. Kyle was waiting for her outside the building. He invited her to a cafe. They talked and laughed for hours. He seemed open, warm, genuine. For the first time in a long time, Valerie felt like someone actually saw her. But the next day, one of Mariana's minions cornered Valerie in the hallway. "Are you stupid? Kyle is Mariana's boyfriend. They're practically engaged. If she finds out you went to a cafe with him, she will destroy you. And she's about to be promoted to department head. So good luck with that." The woman smirked and walked away. Valerie felt the floor shift beneath her feet. The very next morning, when she walked into Mariana's department with her mop, a song blasted from someone's computer speakers. "Hello, thrift store girl." The whole room erupted. Mariana, with a perfectly straight face, approached Valerie and asked, loudly, so everyone could hear, "Excuse me, could you tell me which Goodwill location sells vintage sweaters like yours? I've been looking everywhere for that exact 1987 aesthetic." She pointed at Valerie's scuffed shoes. "And those boots, are those from the Salvation Army's antique collection? Very retro, very humanitarian." But office workers chuckled politely. Nobody wanted to cross Mariana. Valerie stood there, gripping her mop, her knuckles white. Carl sat at his desk. He didn't say a word. He didn't look at her. He laughed along with everyone else. After that day, he never spoke to Valerie again. When they passed each other in the hallway, he'd look away, his eyes on the floor. He knew what he was doing. He was ashamed. but not ashamed enough to do anything about it. Kyle liked his job. He liked his salary. He wanted a promotion. He wasn't about to pick a fight with the future department head over a janitor. People like Kyle have a name. They're called opportunists. Mariana, meanwhile, was riding high. The public humiliation of the janitor who had dared to flirt with her boyfriend gave her a rush. That lasted for days. She was so satisfied that she actually left Valerie alone for a little while. But the damage was done. Valerie wanted to quit. She wanted to walk out and never come back. But when she went to her to ask about resigning, she got a nasty surprise. The contract she'd signed without reading had a clause. If she left before completing her first 30 days, she'd forfeit her entire paycheck. She couldn't afford to lose that money. The piggy bank was almost empty, and now she had someone else to take care of. A tiny white kitten had somehow found its way into the office. Valerie had hidden it in her cleaning supply closet for the rest of the day. God forbid Mariana saw it, she'd probably throw it out the window. That evening, Valerie took the kitten home. She named him Martin. Kind old Dorothy, her landlady, didn't mind the cat at all. When the money ran dangerously low, Valerie shared her last cup of yogurt with Martin. Half for her, half for him. She held on. She counted the days. Finally, payday. It happened to coincide with a visit from the big boss. His name was Nicholas Johnson. He was the CEO, the head of the entire network of offices and subsidiaries. Everyone feared him. Everyone except Mariana. She had wormed her way into his good graces long ago. The former military man appreciated her sharp mind, her boldness, her striking looks. She was his proch. When Nicholas arrived for his inspection tour, he naturally stopped by his favorites department. Mariana leaped from her chair to greet him, and in her haste, her elbow knocked a half-finished paper cup of coffee off the armrest of her oversized office chair. It fell silently to the carpet, spilling a brown puddle across the floor. Without missing a beat, Mariana kicked the cup under her desk with her stiletto heel. Then she turned on her most dazzling smile. "Nicholas, it's been too long. We've missed you around here." She pursed her perfectly lined lips into a playful pout, as if blowing him a kiss. Then her eyes darted to Valerie, who was quietly wiping down the copy machine in the corner. A cruel gleam flickered across Mariana's face. "Although, I have to say, it's never boring around here. Our keeps hiring the most incompetent people. Our new janitor. She might as well not exist. Look at this place. We're practically sitting in a pigsty." She took Nicholas gently by the arm and led him to her workstation. She pointed at the coffee stain on the carpet, the one she had made 30 seconds ago. "See this? Do you see this?" Her voice trembled with manufactured outrage. "She completely ignores my area. It's dusty. It's filthy. I can't work like this." Nicholas frowned. He was not an old man, maybe mid-50s, but he carried himself with the rigid posture of a career military officer. Broad-shouldered, silver-templed, jaw like granite, and he despised disorder. He looked at Valerie. "Come see me in my office," he said curtly, and walked out. His tone promised nothing good. Valerie's heart hammered as she stood before his desk. Why is the office in such poor condition? Why aren't you doing your job properly? She swallowed hard. "Sir, the office was clean. I don't know where that stain came from. I think Mariana did it on purpose. She wants me fired. She's been bullying me since my first day." She couldn't believe her own boldness. The words just came out. Nicholas studied her for a long moment, tapping the cap of his pen against the desk. "You seem like a decent young woman. Why does the staff dislike you so much?" "I don't know, sir." "What's your name? Full name?" Valerie told him. "First name, last name." The pen stopped tapping. Nicholas sat up straighter. His eyes changed. Something shifted behind them, something deep, something old. "Your last name is Dawson," he said slowly. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." "Your father, what was his name?" Kevin Dawson. He was a captain. He died in Afghanistan," Nicholas finished for her. His voice had gone quiet. "Helmand Province, 2005. Valerie stared at him. "He was my best friend," Nicholas said. "He was my brother in arms. Captain Dawson took a fatal hit pulling me out of a kill zone. He saved my life. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair if it weren't for your father." The room went very still. Valerie felt tears prickling behind her eyes. She blinked them back. Nicholas was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke again. and his voice had an edge of steel in it. "So Mariana has been hazing you, running a little mean girls operation in my office. It wasn't a question either. We'll deal with that. Go back to work for now. Tomorrow I'm hiring a new janitor. Kevin Dawson's daughter has no business pushing a mop." He paused. "Is your mother alive?" Valerie shook her head. "How long?" "Since I was 14. So you're an orphan." He said it flatly, like a man confirming battlefield casualties. "Where do you live?" "I was living with my aunt. Now I rent a room." Nicholas's hand curled into a fist on the desk. His knuckles went white. "We'll deal with that too." That evening, Valerie ran home. She didn't walk, she ran. Her feet barely touched the sidewalk. Her first paycheck. And not just a paycheck, a generous bonus on top of it. She stopped at the pet store and bought cans of premium cat food for Martin. She saw a little feathered toy on a string and grabbed that too. That night, sitting on her narrow bed, watching Martin bet his new toy across the floor, Valerie felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. She had earned this. She was providing for herself and for her little cat. And the best part, Nicholas had fired Mariana that very same day. The queen of Dufus, the cruel beauty. The bully who had made Valerie's life a living hell, gone. Escorted out by security with a cardboard box of her personal belongings. No more humiliation. No more thrift store girl. No more laughter at her expense. Although, Valerie thought with a small smile, she could actually afford some new clothes now. She fed Martin, then ran out to buy herself something new to wear, for the first time in her life. The next morning was even more wonderful. When Valerie arrived at Dufus, she was stunned to see an unfamiliar older woman mopping the floors. The HR manager, who had barely acknowledged her existence, before approached her with an almost comically ingratiating smile. He was carrying a new contract. She was being transferred to a client services operator position. No more mops. No more buckets. A desk. A computer. A phone. That afternoon, Nicholas came back to Dufus. He called Valerie in again. This time, he handed her a set of keys. "These are the keys to my second apartment," he said. "I bought it years ago for my kids, when I eventually had them. Well, kids haven't happened yet, and the place has been sitting empty. You'll live there. Kevin Dawson's daughter is not going to bounce around renting rooms from strangers." Valerie's jaw dropped. She looked at the keys in her hand. Then she looked up at him. "But I have a cat. Can I bring Martin?" "I'm not going anywhere without Martin." Nicholas burst out laughing. A real laugh, deep and warm, the laugh of a man who didn't laugh nearly often enough. "You can bring an alligator for all I care. The place has been empty too long. You and your cat. Go make it a home." Valerie moved in that weekend. She hugged Dorothy goodbye, promised to visit, and carried Martin in his little travel crate to a spacious 3-bedroom apartment. That was bigger than any place she'd ever lived in her life. After the move, Valerie didn't just go to work, she flew there. Technically, she was a simple phone operator, but Nicholas had bigger plans. He treated Kevin Dawson's daughter like his own child. He bought her new professional clothes. He furnished the apartment with appliances. And slowly, deliberately, he began teaching her the business. Nicholas was a childless veteran who had built an empire. And in Valerie, he saw his successor. He wanted to make sure that if anything ever happened to him, she could step into his shoes and run everything, every office, every subsidiary, every account. Her Aunt Claudia had always said there was no money for education. Nicholas insisted Valerie enroll at the State University in the business program. He paid for everything. Valerie, the girl who had once mopped floors in thrift store shoes, was now studying economics and learning to run a company. Carl watched all of this with wide eyes. The transformation was extraordinary. The janitor he had taken to coffee and then abandoned, the girl he had laughed at alongside Mariana, was now being personally mentored by the CEO. Suddenly, Carl found the courage to tell Mariana their relationship was over. It didn't wound Mariana in the slightest. She had long considered him a dead-end loser. She was already at her new job, trying to seduce the boss's son. Free of Mariana, Carl made his move. He found Valerie in the break room and casually suggested they grab dinner that weekend. Valerie looked at him, really looked at him. The way you look at something you once thought was valuable and now realize is worthless. "Number. Thank you," she said. Her voice was cool and flat. She walked away, and Carl stood there, holding his coffee. understanding for the first time that he had been weighed and found wanting. Later that night, Valerie lay in bed, shaking her head at herself. What did I ever see in him? A pretty face. That's it, a pretty face on a coward. I actually cried over this man. I actually lost sleep. Where were my eyes? She scratched Martin behind the ears and moved on with her life. One Saturday afternoon, Valerie was at the pet store, picking up food for Martin. She was reaching for a can of premium pat on the top shelf when her elbow bumped it. The can tumbled off the shelf and was snatched out of the air by a hand that moved like lightning. Nice reflexes, Valerie blurted, startled. The hand belonged to a tall young man with warm brown eyes and an easy grin. He set the can back on the shelf and nodded approvingly at the bag of cat food in Valerie's arms. Good brand. You don't cheap out on your cat. I respect that. I try, Valerie said, still a little flustered. I love him. He's my little guy. I love mine too. He's a Savannah cat, big, wild, ridiculous. What breed is yours? Oh, mine is very prestigious, Valerie said with a straight face. He's a purebred American alley cat. Found him in my office. I rescued him before someone threw him out a window. Named him Martin. The young man laughed, a real laugh, not a polite one. His name was Archer. Within 10 minutes, they were talking like old friends. He got her jokes. She liked his openness, the way he looked at the world, the way he shared his thoughts without pretense or calculation. He walked her home without either of them noticing the distance. They stood outside her building and talked about everything and nothing as the sky turned from blue to orange to deep indigo. Neither of them wanted to leave. Valerie thought to herself that it was probably improper to be this obviously smitten on the first day of knowing someone. But before she could say anything, Archer said it for her. I don't want to go, but I probably should. It wouldn't be proper to keep you out here all night. He smiled. Even though I want to. It was as if he had read her mind. Valerie climbed the stairs to her apartment in a daze. She was thinking that maybe it was all true. Everything she'd read in those dog-eared romance novels she'd stayed up late reading as a teenager. The instant connection. The kindred spirits. The person who feels like yours before you even know their name. She didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, eyes wide open, replaying every word, every laugh, every look. In the morning, exhausted and buzzing with an energy that had nothing to do with rest, Valerie got dressed for work. For the first time in months, she didn't want to go to the office. She wanted to run back to the pet store and find Archer. They hadn't even exchanged phone numbers. How could they have talked for hours and forgotten something so basic? She opened her front door, stepped outside, and there he was, standing at the bottom of the steps, looking up at her with those warm brown eyes, tired and bright and certain. I couldn't leave, he said. I went home to feed my cat and came straight back. I've been standing here all night, looking at your window. He pointed up at the second floor. And you didn't sleep either. I saw your light on all night. He took a step closer. This is fate, Valerie. Do you understand? This was meant to happen. You're mine, and I'm yours. And that's just how it is. He pulled her close and breathed in the scent of her hair. And Valerie, the girl who had grown up on bread and margarine, who had buried her mother at 14, who had been called a freeloader and a thrift store girl, who had mocked fools and swallowed her pride, and held her father's brown star in her palm in the darkest hours, and refused to break. Valerie closed her eyes and, for the first time in her life, felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe with the bell so you never miss a new one. Thank you.